if you look at the state funds, the two largest pie slices are education and healthcare. And so long as healthcare continues to grow above GDP growth and above inflation and cost, the state's going to keep slicing education. And that's going to put every school district in the state into the situation where they're going to need to shave 1% this year, 1% next year, 1% next year. Because of Measure 5, we've been doing that for 27 years, and that's the situation that we're in here at PPS. We need to figure out how to change that, how to address that. Julia mentioned a short-term local income tax that was passed in the early 2000s. That would be one approach. My focus for my term is to approach the revenue shortfall, that funding problem, and try and come up with creative solutions in order to fund PPS and Portland's education system appropriately.
Great.
I just want to clarify something because I didn't say that we had enough money.
No,
I was responding to Nigel's question.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
You said relative to other districts, we actually have more.
So we have, relative to the other Oregon districts, we have more money and get worse results, which is not a good combination.
They're also underfunded, but I want to focus on that.
Yeah, Julia, what was your top priority?
My top priority, deliver on our mission of every student by name prepared for college and career participation, regardless of race, income, and zip code. And I think we only do that for part of our students. And the board has a key role of setting culture, accountability, providing the leadership, and lining the budget behind it to make that happen. And it's at a very high level, strategic, setting that plan, working with the superintendent, and then following through to make sure the budget and the policies align behind that, and that's not happening. And we need to create a system. I think that's the board's.
Can you be specific about how that's not happening? Are you saying that Roosevelt and Madison get less than Lincoln and Grant?
They do.
Okay. So how does that play itself out? Do they get less talented principals, less experienced teachers, less money for chemistry?
All those things. They don't get less money, but it's not equal. You want equal outcomes, not equal. You can't have equal inputs because some of those high schools, students that are coming there, they've been to several different schools. They're not at benchmark when they get to high school. So it's not having equal inputs.
So you give more money to the Title I schools or to the schools where children.
And you have a system of supports and intentional supports. There's early warning systems so that you're being able to put supports into the schools where it's needed.
But is that fair to the kids at Lincoln and Grant if you give more money to Roosevelt and Madison?
So I fundamentally believe, and this is the game that PPS played with the Parents Coalition of saying, trying to play parents off one another, and all students in PPS deserve a base level education. So let's just take high school, because there's a whole other piece we can talk about middle school, but high school, they all deserve to have college prep classes, no matter what school, whether it's AP, IB, dual credit. They also all deserve to have relevant sort of hands-on CTE type classes because there's kids at Lincoln who need that, just as there are kids at Roosevelt and Madison. And so one of my most fundamental tenets will always be we need to provide a strong, rigorous set of classes and education to all kids, and we're going to need to make additional investments for when there's struggling students or when there's students who frankly tag students who are bored with getting the standard curriculum to better individualize the supports the students get. So yes, that will be added to, but should it be the kids at Grant and Lincoln don't get to have college prep classes because
then are you talking about more revenue?
So I think, certainly I think this system needs more revenue. So I think it's a three-part. Do you want me to provide sort of a whole answer or just say yes?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So.
No, I don't know your view on this.
Okay, so I think there's a three-part answer. One, more state funding. So they've, at the state level, have adopted a pension plan that they just then pass those expenses on to the school district, and the school district doesn't have an opportunity, they don't have a revenue stream that can pay for the level of increases from the pension fund the district can. So yes, there should be more state revenue going to schools. 2, we have an obligation locally to pass within the bounds of what's allowed, a local option. And then 3, the money that we have this year's budget, $616 million, is that we better spend that money well. So I think the worst possible thing the board did, it was a teeny expenditure, but when they gave Carol Smith a 40-something pay increase, and then parents went to Salem and said, you need to fund our schools, and they said, like, why would we do that? Like, you're not spending your money, it's not focused on the classroom. So I think there's, to get new revenue, and I think our local taxpayers want that as well. We need to be able to demonstrate also that the $616 million that we're given is spent well, and that we're highly accountable, and that it's transparent. If you look at the budget, it's an opaque document. You wouldn't know where the money went.
I'm sorry, I have to leave early for a.
Are we already out of time? Okay.
No, you've got the rest of it.
All right. And I had one other follow-up to something you said, which was at least one current board member believes that high schools are actually the strength of the system right now. Do you believe that to be the case? Like relative to what's going on in middle schools and elementary schools?
Well, this is a qualifier. I think we can do much better.
Okay.
I think there's some great things happening in the high schools. So the high school in Zone 6 there's some amazing things happen. They have more kids taking AP classes, and those are kids who are in poverty. Those are kids who have been historically disadvantaged. They have an amazing set of classes and teachers who are doing great things for students, and counselors who are getting kids into colleges and community colleges. So I think there's some great things, but I would say, are they where they should be? Absolutely not. I mean, to Zach's point, there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of getting our kids ready for sort of their next steps. I'd say the weakest portion that really the board needs to spend sort of day one focus on is the middle grades in the K-8s that are under enrolled, because if that were happening in other parts of town, it would have ended long ago. And I think that's the place where a lot of attention needs to be focused right away.
Have you all appeared together at other?
Yeah.
Once
on Tuesday. Yeah.
On Tuesday, okay. So is there, we can start with you, Josie. Is there anything that you think is dramatically different? How would you distinguish yourself from the other candidates, either in a policy position or approach?
We're the friendly race, though.
I feel like so. Like
the other two being less friendly.
I'm super excited about like the level of civic engagement and the level of discourse and like what we're talking about and how we're engaging in it. Like I think I am really excited about this race. I think all three of us have really good ideas, and we bring different kinds of expertise, right? Like just as much as Julia could talk about being on phone calls across the world, I can talk about knowing exactly what it's like to be your own boss, starting your own business, trying to make it in the gig economy, in the STEM economy. I know what training is necessary for the vast majority of our youth that are going to be trying to get jobs that aren't executive jobs right out of college. Like that's where I am right now. Right, like I have that kind of experience. So like we all have different backgrounds, and we've talked about before, like, one of my benefits, the way I think about my newness is with a fresh perspective. Like I don't come in unqualified with experience. I have experience, but it's been elsewhere. I grew up in a family of public school teachers. My brother is still a physical education teacher in a public school. And we talk all the time about the issues with curriculum implementation. Right? Like so I understand the problems, and it's not with the teachers, it's always with the structures. Right, like so we talk about the issues at Madison and Roosevelt compared to Jefferson, and Madison and Roosevelt are getting high FTE to student ratios, yet are still having low results, and a lot of that has to do with structural issues, not with I mean, like, none of the schools have the right number of teachers and the right number of bodies, but the fact that we have the opposite relationship that we would want to see between number of bodies in a school per student and graduation rate tells me that there's issues with the system. And so fresh eyes coming in can help see that, can help bring together constituents that haven't had a voice before, haven't felt like they've been present at the table. And that's really what I want to provide. And I don't think necessarily that, you know, any one of us would be bad or wrong for this position. Like I said before, I think we all bring really good heart and energy and interest in doing this job to serve all of the students of PPS, and we just have different spins on that and different backgrounds. And I think that's a really great position to be in, where it's not, you know, like one really great person and one really evil person or something like that. I feel like this is going to be a good choice for the the voters to make next month.
Zach, do you want to take
Sure, yeah. So I want to echo a lot of what...
key differences is the question?
Yes, for sure. I want to echo a lot of what Josie said, though. I would be lying if I didn't say that Julia is the obvious front runner in this race. She has a lot more name recognition and experience, and that's all good stuff. The key difference for me, though, is that I am an outsider, and I have a big vision. I have a big vision for what our country can do, what our state can do, and what Portland can do. And I like to say, when I first started looking at politics, I found out it's difficult to run for senator. So I figured I'd start local and start down that path. And that's really the difference that you're going to hear from me is a consistent message that we need to fund PPS appropriately, and that PPS needs to deliver to the taxpayers what that funding is going to do. And there will be an alignment with the board, an alignment with either our existing strategic mission, which Julia mentioned earlier, or a new one that more accurately represents the goals and aspirations that we have for our school system. That's the message. That's what I think differentiates me from my opponents, and I'm just going to keep saying it.
Well, I want to first say that I really applaud Josie and Zach getting in the race. I think serving on the school board is the best way you can contribute to your community, and I also think it's the hardest political job in the country. So I've worked in Washington, D.C. for the U.S. Senate. I've also worked in the Oregon legislature, so I've seen sort of politics at all levels, and I think serving on a local school board is the hardest political job, because you're dealing with the thing that makes the biggest, the thing that people care most about, which is their kids and their community's future. So hats off to both these guys for getting in there and putting their point of views out, and I think they will bring fresh ideas if they're on the board to the work. The thing that I think that distinguishes me is I have a 20-plus year record. People aren't going to know what they're going to get. Most of that has been outside the system, not in it. But when I was in it, I was effective, and I held the, I think, broader organization accountable to students and their parents. Portland Public Schools is a large, complex organization. It's $1.6 billion all funds budget, 7,000 employees, and I think that having somebody who knows how the system works, from having been a leader of it and having been basically kind of blocked out by the current board or in the previous administration, that I can make a real difference, and I think people will know what they're going to get, and that's strong leadership and effective leadership and not just experience, because I totally agree, like experience in and of itself can be good and bad, but I think what I'll bring is a track record of really delivering for students.
Well, thank you all for coming in. We have one last question.
Is this the superhero question?
I guess it was the year you ran in the past, but we ask a question at the end that we hope will be fun for you, but it's designed to bring out personalities. So this year it is, because it's all school board races. what would your high school yearbook have said about you? What superlative would you have gotten? Like, you know, most popular, class clown, like
in reality or in hindsight, retrospect?
What do you mean?
So
I'm not
like,
sure.
what did it actually say, or what would
You
it
can-
say now looking back?
You can answer either.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm happy to go first. So I have this really great, I love that I still have it, this sports memorabilia, this plaque from when I was in high school, and I was the, because I identified as a male at the time, and I don't now, I was the male of the male and the female student athlete of the year for my class. So that was, I was
What'd you play?
So I played football, wrestling, and baseball. I did baseball until my junior year when I switched to track. I lettered in multiple sports. I was the salutatorian of my high school. I was super involved. I think a lot of that has to do with the community that I was brought up in and the support system that I had around it. So I know that a lot of that comes from the privileges that I had in my life. But yeah, like for me, I like to think of myself as somebody who is like, and I'm a, you know, I play roller derby on a world championship team. Like I do that as well as this intellectual stuff. I can be somebody who is engaged in multiple parts of an educational and academic community. So I think that was something that I was voted or selected for, and I think that still rings true today.
Thank you. Julia?
So it's funny because I'll tell you what it said in my yearbook, and you can go back and the Washington Monroe. So I was the most athletic. That's really what kept me. I liked school, but I also really love sports, and so I was a 5-sport, 12 varsity letter athlete. And I think the things that I loved about sport is like the team. I like it's all about getting results. So there's a clear at the end of the day, a winner and a loser, and I liked being part of a team and the strategy and working hard and discipline. So all those things. So that's what it would have said. I think if you ask people now, so I'm still a runner and things, but if you ask people now, I think they would more describe me as like strategic and tough and persistent. So like most persistent or
Good quality in a school board member.
gotta be like a dog with a bone sometimes.
At least PPS.
I also played a bunch of sports, but then sophomore year, everyone got way bigger than me, so I stopped playing sports, and I became a theater kid, and I acted, and we did musicals, so I sang and danced and that whole thing. But what I really loved doing was set construction. And so I was the master carpenter for a number of plays, overseeing all of that, the whole set construction. And there was an award that we would give out for like the most crucial member of the crew team, which was the Golden Hammer. So it might be a little specific to my high school, but that's what my yearbook would say.
Great. I really appreciate you all coming in.
Can I actually ask a question of the two of you, especially given that we're all like athletes by background and stuff? Can we all agree on the record that 30 minutes of PE every other week is insufficient for anybody's educational background? Sports are great, but like we need to be supporting our students, like being physically active as part of the class day, not as part of sports, not as part as recess, but like in the actual classroom.
So totally agree. In fact, in 10 years ago, I helped pass the bill that required PE in Oregon schools, and that we gave them 10 years.
10 years, and they haven't planned
and
for
they haven't done it. Well, this is an interesting thing because Portland hasn't really done anything, and yet Beaverton is leading the way, and again, they have the same or less money than Portland, and they're prioritizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, all the research shows that active kids learn better.
The research has shown that.
I'll join the record on this.
Research showed that 10 years ago when that law was passed.
Yes.
Yeah, let's just show like, we ended all in consensus.
Yes.
Very nice to
PE.
meet you.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
So where's your brother a PE teacher at?
Northern Illinois.
Is this